Hi folks, welcome to another journey just off the highway. I'm in the magnificent Valley of the Rainbow Estate and Nature Reserve in Mpumalanga. Just to orientate you, we're very close to Dullstroom im which is about 25 kilometers east, and Johannesburg is about 250 kilometers west of here. The owner of this estate, Jamie van Zyl, has kindly invited us to stay in this restored watermill, the main part of which was built around 1866, and it was still a working mill in 1996, 130 years later. Now, how this building survived, despite bits being torn down and blown up, is only one of today's stories. Because actually, the watermill is the youngster in the area. Just up that hill, there's another site that's many centuries older, and some of those structures, and others like them in this region, may be as much as 800 years old. And it was all built by African people so shrouded in time and mystery that we don't even know their proper names. We do know the name of the farm where this mill was built, Witpoort, and of the person who built it, Willem Jacobus Volkskenk. Now I'm standing at the graveyard on the farm, where his son, also Willem Jacobus Volkskenk, is buried, and he died in 1946. The cause of death? A neighbor hit him in the head with a shovel during an argument over water rights. When you stand in this beautiful valley and you see how lush it is, it's almost impossible to picture that there could be such a heated dispute over water. And yet, that's human nature. In this small area, we can go back nearly 1,000 years of human habitation with vastly different groups of people. And the common thread always seems to be conflict between different visions of the future. Let's go up the hill. Here at Valley of the Rainbow, one of the attractions that you can hike up and see is a major archaeological site belonging to one of the earliest groups of South Africans that we know of. They were called the Koni people, and 2 weeks ago I'd never even heard of them. So, from Jamie van Zyl and various other internet sources, here's what I managed to find out. When we say Koni people, that's what other groups called them. We don't know what name they called themselves. Now the word Bokoni is used for these societies that they built, and the name Coney is now used to refer to the people. Researchers aren't even sure if they were a single group or several different ones, but theories are that they came from the northwest, but also from the east. But they had one obvious thing in common. They built serious stone structures that still stand today. Unique features of Bokoni sites are the terraces that indicate organized agriculture, and even stone roads to transport produce and livestock. Now their fields, their paved roads, this is evidence of major planning and effort. There's like a growing surplus and trade routes linking them to a market. So why has the average South African not heard much more about them? for many decades, they were actually understudied because they don't fit into any convenient political narratives about who settled South Africa and when. They do appear in the oral traditions of the Pedi people, and there are stories of conflict between them. And they probably had other enemies as well, because they chose to build their structures on high ground, in good defensive positions, and not simply down in the valley where access to water would have been easier. So what happened to them? Well, apparently there's no definitive answer. Experts say that some were assimilated into other groups by the 1800s, some were dispersed and their traces lost. But their foundations, they're still here. The fact is, there's a lot more to learn about the Coney people. Their story is the story of this valley. Settlement, farming, trade, war. So let's go back down the hill and skip forward to the turn of the 20th century. And as often happens on Just Off the Highway, our paths cross with the devastation of the Anglo-Boer War. Now, this incident happened after the conventional phase of the war, as Boer strategy evolved into guerrilla warfare. Now, basically, this meant that instead of getting drawn into pitched battles, highly mobile, mounted groups would hit the long British supply lines at times and places of their choosing, and then escape when enemy reinforcements arrived. Disrupting British control of territory, tying up huge amounts of their troops to protect vulnerable convoys and routes, that was the aim. Now, there's an old road across this valley. It's fairly faint, but it still exists, and that was one of these routes. Several skirmishes took place in this area. A few hundred nimble Boer horsemen under General Ben Viljoen always managed to nip at a flank and escape up this valley before the British cordon of 11,000 could close. This exact watermill was another feature that made this valley at Witpoort so vital to the Boer ability to survive and keep fighting. They relied on this place to provide them with food provisions that they so desperately needed. It was able to grind meal in 3 textures. There was very fine for human consumption, a medium grind for small animals like chickens, and then a coarse grind for large livestock like cattle. The commander of the British force in the area was Lieutenant General Sir Binden Blood. Yep, really. His name was Binden Blood. History provides us with a name like a villain in a James Bond movie. And the British response to guerrilla warfare was scorched earth. To deny the Boers access to replenish equipment and horses, to ensure that they had no food supplies, to cut them off from their people. And there comes a point when no matter how agile the Boer forces were, exhaustion begins to set in. I found the following passage in a book called Painting the Map Red about Canadian forces in the South African War. It's by Carmen Miller. Now, for those not familiar with scorched earth, I'd like to read this paragraph. Farm burning procedure was simple. Upon their approach to a farm, village or town, the guns covered the mounted men and infantry as they did the dirty work. The provost marshal informed the inhabitants of their intentions. The soldiers removed the women and children with their personal belongings, then looted the houses. What the men could eat, they ate. What they could carry, they took. And what they didn't want, they destroyed. The officers standing by laughing at the fun their men were having. Then they razed the house. Buildings which could not be burnt were blown up. All the livestock was confiscated. Altogether, the column burnt a track about 6 miles wide through these fertile valleys. Villages and towns such as Witpoort, and Dullstroom were completely destroyed. And that's exactly where we sit today. So General Sir Bindon Blood ordered the mill destroyed by explosives. And this of course meant that any civilians still in the area wouldn't be able to use it either and would face serious food shortages. This devastation in this area caused a local burgher, a citizen, to complain bitterly that God was soundly asleep in this area. But for some strange reason, dynamite didn't do its job properly that day. The coarse grinder for cattle feed was damaged, but the other two weren't. The miller secretly managed to replace that part, and the mill was able to keep churning out meal till the end of the war. A small blessing in what became a long, drawn-out, bitter struggle. Today, the Valley of the Rainbow is a much happier place. Special thanks to Jamie van Zyl for sharing his knowledge and to his staff for accommodating us at this historic mill. It is so sensitively renovated that you get luxury without losing any of the history. And also thanks to Dalian van Zyl, no relation, for suggesting this story. Folks, please do send in your suggestions of places, names, people, forgotten stories. I'd love to add them into the series of Just Off the Highway. If you've enjoyed this video, please remember to hit that like button, subscribe, share so that we can get these stories out to as many people as possible. If you'd like some bonus content, then what you do is you go to buymeacoffee.com/lprodgers and just become a member. Or if you'd like to show some appreciation, you can click on the thanks button below this video. See you next time, Just Off the Highway.